This is why I got an attitude about the story. Because somebody else's moment was hijacked. The story was not, this Verzuz was so good. The story is Tamar Braxton, Cash Money, No Limit Verzuz. That, I think that did a disservice to the whole thing. Somebody else's moment was hijacked.
When cameras caught Tamar Braxton wiping sweat off Birdman's forehead at the Cash Money versus No Limit Verzuz battle, the internet lost its mind. But here's where it gets wild. Her sister Toni, who happens to be married to the guy, was nowhere in sight. Within hours, fans were digging up old accusations, connecting dots, and asking one burning question: did Tamar really cross that line with her sister's husband, or is everyone getting the story completely backwards?
Tamar, girl, why are you wiping the sweat off of Birdman's head like that, sis? The man's been performing on stage all this time and he don't need you wiping the sweat off his head.
The chaos started at Complex Con Las Vegas on October 25th, 2025, during what should have been a legendary celebration of hip-hop history. Cash Money Records, going head-to-head with No Limit Records, had everyone hyped, ready to relive the glory days of New Orleans rap. Birdman was on stage repping his label hard, performing classics that built his empire, but then Tamar Braxton appeared, and suddenly the music became background noise. She wasn't just there supporting from the crowd like a normal sister-in-law. She was right there on stage, front and center, acting like she owned the place. At one point, cameras zoomed in on her gently dabbing the sweat from Birdman's forehead with a towel, her hand lingering just a bit too long for comfort. She clutched his arm as he addressed the crowd, stood behind him like a bodyguard, and moved around that stage with the confidence of someone who belonged there. The energy was different. Fans watching the live stream immediately felt something was off. Where was Toni? Why was her younger sister playing wifey while the actual wife was missing in action? Social media erupted instantly. Comments flooded in calling the whole thing distasteful, inappropriate, and straight-up disrespectful. One user wrote they were getting secondhand embarrassment watching Tamar treat Birdman like he was her man. Another pointed out that if the roles were reversed and Toni was touching Tamar's man like that, all hell would break loose. The clips went viral within minutes, and suddenly everyone was talking about it. But here's what made the situation even messier. This wasn't just random internet gossip. Just one day before the Verzuz battle, an explosive episode of the Braxtons' reality show had aired, and Towanda Braxton had dropped a bomb that nobody saw coming. Fans immediately connected the two events, and theories started flying about what was really going on. The restaurant scene that changed everything happened so fast that even Toni looked blindsided. All four sisters, Toni, Tamar, Trina, and Towanda, were sitting around a table trying to hash out family issues. The conversation started with typical sister stuff: money problems, hurt feelings, wedding drama. Tamar was going off about not being invited to Towanda's bachelorette party and feeling excluded from the wedding. But then things took a dark turn.
Do I know where you live?
Well, of course you don't come. So
Exactly.
my
So
thing,
how would I
I know
give
where
it
you
to
live because I put down your down payment.
Beautiful.
And you've been stealing from me for the past couple years on my credit card.
Tamar decided to put Towanda on blast about financial issues, specifically mentioning that she had covered the down payment on Towanda's house, and claiming that Towanda had been secretly using her credit cards for years. The tension was already thick, but nobody expected what came next. Towanda, clearly fed up with being called out, fired back with ammunition she'd been saving.
And you've been stealing from me for the past couple years on my credit cards. And help
But
me.
what you steal?
I don't steal anything.
You don't? You sold men.
Who's the man that I stole?
Tony's. You slept with them.
Oh,
a few times. Oh, you're such a liar. Such a liar.
She looked Tamar dead in the eye and said the words that would break the internet. You stole men, Tony's men. You slept with them a few times. The table went silent. Tamar's face showed pure shock, like she couldn't believe her sister would go there on national television. But what really stood out was Toni's reaction. The confusion on her face was genuine. She had no idea what Towanda was talking about, which meant either this was news to her too, or she'd been in denial about it for years. Naturally, the internet turned into a detective agency overnight. Fans started pulling up Toni's entire dating history, trying to figure out which men Towanda was referring to. The fact that she said men, plural, meant this wasn't just about one person. Some people pointed to Carrie Lewis, the mint condition member who Toni married back in 2001. They were together for over a decade and had 2 sons before divorcing in 2013. Rumors started circulating that maybe Tamar had gotten involved with him at some point, though nothing concrete ever surfaced. Then there was the mention of actor Shemar Moore, who Toni briefly dated in the mid-90s after he appeared in her music video. But the name that kept coming up over and over again was the most obvious one: Birdman himself. After all, fans had just watched Tamar all over him at the Verzuz, and now Towanda was saying she'd been with Toni's men before. The timeline was adding up in people's minds, and it wasn't looking good for Tamar. Old blog posts from 2011 started resurfacing, with one gossip site claiming that Tamar had pursued relationships with men in Toni's circle because she was desperate to climb the industry ladder. The post even alleged that the connection between Tamar and her ex-husband Vince Herbert happened through Toni first. Whether that's true or just messy speculation, it definitely added fuel to the fire. But just when it seemed like everyone had turned against Tamar, someone unexpected came to her defense. The rapper known as DaBrat, who worked with Tamar on a show and became close friends with her, decided to set the record straight. In a social media video that got everyone talking, Brat laid out a timeline that completely flipped the narrative. She confirmed that Tamar and Birdman had actually been romantically involved way back in 2003, more than a decade before Toni and Birdman went public with their relationship.
Now it's going around that Tamar and Birdman dated back in 2003, and now we know that Toni and Birdman are married.
According to Brat, Tamar was with him first, and what Toni eventually built with Birdman came much later. If that's true, then the whole Tamar stole her sister's man story falls apart. Industry whispers have backed this up too, with multiple sources saying that Tamar and Birdman were definitely an item in the early 2000s when he was building his cash money empire and she was still trying to break through as a solo artist. The connection made sense back then. Both were ambitious, both were in the music industry, and both were making moves. Fast forward to 2016, and suddenly Toni and Birdman are everywhere together, making red carpet appearances and confirming they're a couple. Brat's point was simple: if Tamar dated him first and then watched her sister marry that same man years later, she's actually been incredibly supportive about the whole thing. Remember when Tamar and her son dressed up as Toni and Birdman for Halloween? That's not the behavior of someone trying to steal another woman's man. That's someone trying to show love and support despite the awkwardness of the situation. Speaking of awkward, let's talk about Toni and Birdman's relationship, because calling it complicated would be an understatement. These two have known each other for over 25 years, going all the way back to 2002 when Toni was featured on Birdman's track Baby You Can Do It. They shot a flirty music video together, and people assumed they were just friends keeping it professional. For years, that's exactly what it seemed like, a solid friendship with no romantic tension. But in 2016, something shifted. They started showing up together at events, and Tamar was actually one of the first people to hint that something romantic was brewing. By June of that year, they made their official debut as a couple at the BET Awards, looking cozy in matching black outfits. The relationship moved fast. Birdman proposed in 2018, and Toni was spotted with a massive engagement ring that later got stolen from her luggage, adding even more chaos to their story. Then things got weird. They broke up as 2018 turned into 2019, with Toni announcing they were no longer together, but they couldn't stay apart. The on-again, off-again pattern continued for years until they finally decided to make it official. In August 2024, they got married in a secret ceremony that shocked everyone. But here's the kicker. Just 2 weeks after tying the knot, Toni filed for divorce, calling the marriage irretrievably broken. 2 weeks. Most people are still enjoying their honeymoon phase at that point, but apparently, things went south immediately. Then, in a move that surprised absolutely no one who's been following this mess, Toni withdrew the divorce papers in January 20. They're still together now, at least as of this recording, celebrating their first wedding anniversary and acting like that brief divorce filing never happened. So why weren't Toni's other sisters acting the same way Tamar did at the Verzuz? Trina and Towanda were there too, but neither of them was up on stage wiping anyone's forehead or clutching anyone's arm. That's what made Tamar's behavior stand out so much. If Birdman is everyone's brother-in-law, why was only Tamar acting like his personal assistant? Some people think it's because Tamar genuinely has a closer relationship with him, especially if the rumors about them dating first are true. Others believe she was just being extra for attention, which is kind of her brand if we're being honest. Tamar has never been one to fade into the background, but this situation also brings up her history with messy relationship drama. There was that whole situation with Michael Maldon, who's the father of Jermaine Dupri's child. Tamar caught serious heat for getting involved with him, and people called her out for crossing boundaries. There's a pattern here that makes it hard for some folks to give her the benefit of the doubt. And let's not forget about Towanda's own issues. The woman has been accused multiple times of helping herself to other people's belongings. Court documents show she owes nearly $500,000 in debt, including that loan from Tamar for her house down payment. Their mother's social security check supposedly went missing at one point, with Towanda's name attached to the accusations. She's been called sneaky, crafty, and opportunistic by her own family members on camera. So when she drops this bomb about Tamar sleeping with Tony's men, you have to wonder, is she telling the truth, or is she deflecting from her own mess by throwing Tamar under the bus? After the Verzuz ended and the internet was still going crazy with theories, Tamar hopped on social media to defend herself. Someone directly asked her why she was on stage with her sister's man, and Tamar clapped back hard. She said Toni couldn't be there because of scheduling conflicts, and since Toni loves her husband, Tamar decided to hold it down for both her sister and her brother-in-law. She even posted a video showing her and Birdman on a FaceTime call with Toni right after the show, with all three of them smiling and hyping each other up. Toni looked genuinely happy in that clip, praising Tamar for being there and supporting Birdman when she couldn't make it. That video changed some people's minds. Comments started shifting from accusations to appreciation, with fans saying Tamar was actually being the sister everyone needs, loyal, supportive, and willing to show up when it mattered. But plenty of others weren't convinced. They pointed out that the FaceTime call could have easily been staged to control the narrative after the backlash hit, and even if Toni gave her blessing for Tamar to be there, that doesn't explain why Tamar was so comfortable in that role, touching Birdman and moving around him like she'd done it 1,000 times before. The truth is, we might never know exactly what happened between these three. If Tamar really did date Birdman first back in 2003, then the entire story changes. She's not the villain who stole her sister's man, she's the woman who stepped aside and watched her ex build a life with her older sister. That's actually incredibly mature and selfless if you think about it. But if there's more to the story, if something happened between them after Toni got with Birdman, then the accusations make a lot more sense. Towanda seemed pretty confident when she made that claim on national television, and she's known Tamar her entire life. She wouldn't just throw that out there without believing it was true, especially knowing the fallout it would cause. Then again, Towanda had her own reasons to lash out after being publicly embarrassed about money issues. The Braxton family has built their entire brand on messy drama and public feuds. They've made millions off letting cameras document every fight, every betrayal, every tearful reconciliation, so it's hard to know what's real and what's exaggerated for ratings. What we do know is that Birdman is somehow at the center of all this chaos, and he's managed to stay relatively quiet while the sisters tear each other apart over him. The man has dated one sister, possibly had something with another, and married a third after a friendship that lasted decades. Meanwhile, his own relationship with Toni has been anything but stable, with a divorce filing mere days after their wedding and constant speculation about whether they'll actually make it work long-term. The internet remains divided on who's right and who's wrong in this situation. Some people are Team Tamar, believing she's been unfairly dragged through the mud for supporting her family. Others are Team Toni, thinking boundaries were definitely crossed regardless of the history. And then there are those who think the whole thing is manufactured drama designed to keep people talking about the Braxton family and boost ratings for their reality show. One thing's for certain though, this situation has exposed just how complicated family dynamics can get when romance, loyalty, and past relationships collide. Whether Tamar stole her sister's man, or whether she actually had him first and graciously stepped aside, the damage to their sisterhood might already be done. Towanda weaponized that information at the worst possible moment. Tamar's reputation took another hit, and Toni was caught in the middle looking confused and hurt. As for Birdman, he's still out here living his best life, married to a Grammy-winning icon, while her sisters fight over whether he ever belonged to someone else first. The Braxton family has survived plenty of scandals before, from financial troubles, to divorce drama, to public feuds that seemed impossible to repair. But this one feels different. This one cuts deeper, because it's not just about money or fame, it's about trust, loyalty, and whether sisters can ever truly move past the kind of betrayal that Towanda accused Tamar of. Will they work through this? Or will it be the final straw that tears the family apart for good? Only time will tell. But if history has taught us anything about the Braxtons, it's that the drama never really ends. It just takes a break before coming back even messier than before.